Welcome to Storytime with Grammy Field. How are we today? Today I have a book that's called Supergrandpa. It's written by David Schwartz and illustrated by Bert Dobson. Gustaf Hakansson was 66 years old. His hair was snow white. His beard was a white bush. His face rippled with wrinkles whenever he smiled. Gustaf looked like an old man, but he didn't feel old, and he certainly didn't act old. There he is working on a bike. Everyone for miles around knew Gustaf. People saw him on his bicycle, rain or shine, riding through the crooked streets of Grantovka, past the bakers and past the butchers and the wooden toy makers, over the stone bridge leading out of town, up steep hills scattered with farms, down narrow lanes bordered by stones, then home again to his morning paper and a bowl of sour milk and lingonberries. One morning, Gustaf was reading something very interesting in the paper. There was going to be a bicycle race called the Tour of Sweden. It would be more than 1,000 miles long and would last many days. "This Tour of Sweden, is it for me?" exclaimed Gustaf. "But you're too old for a bicycle race," said Gustaf's wife. "You'll keel over," said his son. "It would be the end of you." Even his grandchildren laughed at the idea. "You can't ride your bike 1,000 miles, Grandpa," they scoffed. "Struntprat," Gustaf answered. "Silly talk." And he hopped onto his bike and rode off to see the judges of the race. He would tell them that he planned to enter the Tour of Sweden. "But this race is for young people," said the first judge. "You're too old, Gustaf." "You would never make it to the finish," said the second judge. "We can only admit racers who are strong and fit," said the third judge. "What if you collapsed in the middle of the race?" "Struntprat," protested Gustaf. "I have no intention of collapsing because I am strong and I'm fit." But the judges were not to be moved. "We're sorry, Gustaf," they grumbled. Go home. Go home to your rocking chair." Gustaf went home, but he did not go to his rocking chair. "They can keep me out of the race," he muttered, "but they can't keep me off the road." The next morning, Gustaf began to prepare for the long ride ahead. He arose with the sun, packed some fruit and rye bread, and cycled far out of town, over rolling hills dotted with ancient castles, across valleys dimpled with lakes, through forests thick with birches and pines. It was mid-afternoon before he returned. The next day he biked even farther. Each day he added more miles to his ride. A few days before the race, all the young cyclists boarded a special train to Haparanda in the far north of Sweden, where the race was to begin. But Gustaf was not an official racer. He had no train ticket. There was only one way for Gustaf to ride in the Tour of Sweden. He would have to pedal 600 miles to the starting line. It took him several days to bike there. He arrived just as the Tour of Sweden was about to begin. All the racers wore numbers, but of course there was no number for Gustaf. So he found a bright red scrap of fabric and made his own. What number should it be? He had no idea. He wasn't supposed to be in the race at all, so he would be number 0. He chuckled as he cut out the big red 0 and pinned it to his shirt. Then he wheeled his bicycle to the starting line. The starting gun went off and all the young cyclists took off in a spurt. Their legs pumped furiously and their bikes sprinted ahead. They soon left Gustov far behind. That night, the racers stopped at an inn. They were treated to dinner and a bed. Hours later, Gustov reached the inn too. But there was no bed for him, so he kept riding. While the others snoozed the night away, Gustov pedaled into the dawn. Early the next day, the other cyclists passed Gustov, but he kept up his steady pace, and late that evening he again overtook the young racers as they rested. In the middle of the night, he napped for 3 hours on a park bench. On the third morning, Gustov was the first to arrive in the little town of Luleå. A small crowd of people waited, hoping to catch a glimpse of the racers zooming by. Instead, they saw Gustov. His white beard fluttered in the breeze. His red cheeks were puffed out with breath. "Look!" cried a little girl. "Look! There goes Supergrandpa!" "Supergrandpa?" everyone craned to see. Yes, he does look like a Supergrandpa. A few clapped. Others shouted friendly greetings. Some of the children held out their hands and Gustov brushed their palms as he rolled by. "Thank you, Supergrandpa. Good luck to you." The photographer snapped Gustov's picture. It appeared the next day in the newspaper. The headline read, "Supergrandpa takes a ride." Look at that. Now all of Sweden knew about Supergrandpa Gustaf Hakansson. When he got hungry or thirsty, people gave him sour milk with lingonberries, tea and cake, fruit juice, rye bread, or any other snack he wanted. Newspaper reporters rushed up to talk with him. Radio interviewers broadcast every word he spoke. Everyone wanted to know how he felt. "I have never felt better in my whole life," he told them. "But aren't you tired?" they asked. "How can I be tired when I am surrounded by so much kindness?" And with a push on the pedal and a wave of his hand, Gustaf was rolling down the road again. Once again, Gustaf rode through the night, passing the other racers while they slept. While his muscles felt stiff, he remembered his cheering fans. He pedaled harder. And so it went, day after night, night after day. By the light of the moon, Gustaf quietly passed the young racers in their beds, then slept outside, but only for a few hours. Under the long rays of the morning sun, they overtook him and left him struggling to keep up with his spirits and his pace. But each day, it took them longer, a little longer, to catch up with Gustaf. On the 6th morning of the race, thousands lined the road. As Gustaf rode by, their joyful cheers traveled with him like a wave through the crowd. "You're almost there, Supergrandpa. A few more miles. Don't look back. You're going to win." Win? Gustaf hadn't thought about winning. He had simply wanted to ride in the Tour of Sweden and reach the finish line. But win? "You're out in front, Supergrandpa." "A few more miles, Supergrandpa, and you'll be the winner." The winner! Gustaf glanced over his shoulder. The pack of racers was catching up. Their heads and shoulders were hunched over over their handlebars. Their backs were raised high above their seats. Gustaf decided not to think about them. Instead, he thought about his many fans. He thought about how they wanted him to win. And suddenly, He wanted to win too. Gustaf looked ahead. In the distance, he could see a bright banner stretched all the way across the road. The finish line. Gustaf lowered his head. He raised his back. He whipped his legs around with all their might and all their motion. The next time he looked up, he was bursting through the banner and rolling over the finish line, just before another racer thundered past. Oops. Can't turn that page. The crowd roared. People lifted Gustaf onto their shoulders. They showered him with flowers. They sang victory songs. The police band played patriotic marches. The 3 judges, however, said that Gustaf could not be the winner because he was never actually in the race. Besides, it was against the rules to ride at night. No, the big gold trophy would go to another racer, not to Gustaf. But no one seemed to care about what the judges said. Even the king stepped up to hug Gustaf and invite him to the palace. And to nearly everyone in Sweden, Gustaf Hakansson, 66 years old, his hair as white as snow, his beard a great white bush, his smiling face an orb of wrinkles, to them, Supergrandpa Gustaf Hakansson had won the Tour of Sweden. That's the end of the story. What do you think? Do you think Supergrandpa won the race? I know, I certainly think so. But you know what? That's also a story about never give up. Don't always believe what everybody else tells you, because if you want to do something, you can do it. Thank you for joining me for story time.